Hey there, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Sam Beiler. I'm the CEO and co-founder here at Boostpoint, and I'm excited about talking about recruitment marketing here in 2023, looking at strategy, some trends, and things tips and strategies that you should be thinking about here as we're in the middle of the year. So first of all, I just wanted to bring a quick snapshot to like where we're at right now, even in the job market, and just bring a little bit of context of exactly where we're at and how this should drive some of our recruitment strategy as we're looking to continue to evolve that throughout the year. So right now, like looking at the job market, just back in May, 339,000 jobs added in May. There's still over 10 million job openings in the US. These are US statistics, by the way, and a low unemployment rate of 3.7%, which is almost exactly where it was at, pre-COVID and some of the months that that we were there. So basically, we still have, even in kind of a shuttering economy, we still have a really competitive job market. Over 10 million job openings in the US. That was, again, just bringing some context, like pre-COVID, that was hovering around like 7 million. And so we still have a lot of job openings every month. Even the past 3 months, just the new jobs added in the US has been climbing. And so at the end of the day, it's still a really competitive job market. And I'm sure that's what you all are feeling every day. To go along with that, most of the recruitment teams that I talk with every day, they've also seen a decent reduction in the budgets that they have to work with. So we still have a really competitive job market, a lot of open positions, open recs that we're trying to fill, but a decreased budget to fill those positions. So someone I was talking with the other day, was a very inspiring conversation. Like basically they're just in the mode of thinking, all right, if we don't have the budget of what we used to, instead of just kind of giving up and being like, all right, like, how do we do this? Like, how do we think more strategic than in our hiring strategies? And so to me, that needs to be kind of the overarching focus this year, is how do we recruit, how do we hire more efficiently and smarter? So I'm excited about talking about some of those strategies here today as we look at what strategies in recruitment marketing are we seeing really successful as they're being deployed in this job market. So let's first talk about like the concept of recruitment marketing. Like, why recruitment marketing? Why do we want to focus on this as organizations? And simply put, the way I think about this is, to attract the best workers to our organization, we really need to be getting in front of them before they're looking for a job. And the only way that we do that is by helping our brand and deploying our brand in a way that people discover us, even if they're not looking for a position right at that moment. So what are ways in the local markets that we're hiring that we can become a brand that they recognize and that they want to work for? Think of, just maybe from like a consumer perspective, the brands that you shop at on a daily basis, whether that's for clothing or food. But most of the times, the way you make those decisions is not just because like, I got an ad necessarily, or again, sometimes that can trigger us to action, but most times it's because, we've been aware of these companies before. It's not the first time that we've seen them. And that's really what we're trying to build with recruitment strategies, is how do we position our employer brand so that people are continuously seeing our brand even before they're looking for a new position. And again, a lot of things, come into play, when we look at, strategic advertising. You have some of your, let's look at channels right now. You have some of your traditional job boards, Indeed, Monster, ZipRecruiter, those are still very relevant and important. But the way I think about those is segmenting the people that you're trying to go after, as think of that as like active job seekers and passive job seekers. So 73% of like the total candidate pool are categorized as passive job seekers, 73%. So that's really what I want to focus on here today, is how do we get in front of that candidate pool with effective recruitment marketing strategies. And then again, think of the active candidate pool. That's where you're really investing in more traditional like job board advertising through Indeed and similar platforms. So going over some of my notes here. So again, thinking about this again from a strategic, a budget and a strategy perspective. Again, another individual I recently talked with, I think this was last week. And again, this is the mindset that I want to help us get into, is they were in this scenario where they knew they were being outspent 7-1 by a competitor in their area. So their mindset was, all right, since we don't have that type of budget, how are we going to be smarter? How are we going to market and advertise our brand smarter and position ourselves still to be a relevant employer, even though we know we're being seriously outspent? And so that's where I want to kind of segue here into looking at what are the best channels then to message yourself and brand yourself as organizations. And social media is one of those best channels. As we look at, again, there's dozens of channels that you could look at. You have traditional media, things like billboards, TV ads, radio ads, and then you have a lot of digital media. You've got Google ads, YouTube ads, social media when it comes to Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. And how do you know like where to start when you're thinking about building your employer brand in a specific market? And so the way I like to think about this is, how the diversity of candidates, like let that be a part of your strategy. So knowing that, all right, you're going to capture a certain segment of candidates through Indeed and ZipRecruiter, Monster, and then you're going to then look at passive candidates. Where do they spend most of their time? And that's really what's going to guide you into selecting and focusing on the right channels. Does your audience, are they on Facebook a lot? Are they on YouTube? Or maybe you do more professional and skilled jobs? Are they potentially on LinkedIn more than versus some of those other platforms? So that's, first of all, think about where your audience is, and that's how you should be selecting your specific channels. And that's can sometimes be different, than your own online behavior. If you spend most of your time on Twitter or LinkedIn, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's where the workforce that you're targeting is spending their time. So get in the shoes of the audience that you're specifically looking to target, and think about where they might be spending their time on a daily basis. When we broken down these channels, we do a lot of analytics on different platforms. Kind of the way to think about the segmentation of some of these is Facebook's still one of your biggest platforms right now, owned by Meta, and you'll often have your more middle-aged demographic spending a lot of time there. You still have a lot of younger people as well, but that's going to be the primary audience there. So, Facebook is a great platform, for frontline workers, construction, manufacturing, those types of roles. That can be a great platform to prioritize, for if I'm talking to a manufacturing company and, they're looking for frontline workers, or even healthcare, I'm most times guiding them towards Facebook being the channel that they prioritize over other channels. But then you have, Instagram, TikTok, or other major platforms as well with their user base that are well worth your time to to invest in even on the advertising and the organic side. And there you're going to have a bit of a younger audience versus Facebook. LinkedIn, like I mentioned before, there you're going to have more of professional roles on those types of platforms. So, IT, software engineering, roles like that. LinkedIn may be a better platform for you to focus on versus some of the other channels. So that's how you want to think about platforms specifically is, all right, my audience and the workers that I'm trying to attract, where are they spending most of their time? And so it's super important to have a strategy for both active and passive job seekers. One of the things I'm seeing, so, looking at segmenting then your strategy as well from a paid strategy to an organic strategy. A lot of recruitment teams, maybe try to lump that into one, but the type of content that you're going to want to leverage for paid versus organic will change a little bit. So let's talk through that a bit more. So specifically looking at social media as a platform that you're broadcasting your message, the organic side, you're really looking to build the long-term perception and employer brand of your organization. So you're going to be posting things sometimes more generic than like job specific posts. This can be a great platform to still advertise your specific job openings. Hey, you've opened up a rec here and you need to fill a specific role. Go ahead, post those organically. But you're also going to want to have a big mixture of more high level content, things about your organization, what makes your organization special, maybe employee testimonials, content about existing employees and how they love their job. Maybe things about hiring events or your benefits and things like that maybe the specific call to action isn't apply for this specific position right now, but you're more just keeping consistent content out there that will enhance your perception in front of your specific audience. So organic, that's kind of the main strategy when you have you're looking at posting content on these platforms is, position specific at times, but the majority of your content, it being more about your organization to establish the brand of your organization and result to employer specific. So a lot of brands, we focus a lot on customer centric and, we're advertising our products and things like that for our customers. But you also need to think about that from an employer brand perspective. And then on the paid advertising side, this is where you want to be very strategic. And not a lot of teams that I talk with understand that this can be a really great strategy for increasing applicants and looking at as a direct supply of qualified candidates. Versus just building your employer brand. Again, building your employer brand, really look at organic for that, but you can really look at paid advertising. So sponsoring content on platforms like Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. This can be a huge lift in increasing your candidate flow for your position. Similar to, the way you'd think about Indeed spend. It's like, all right, I'm going to spend X amount of dollars and I'm going to expect a certain amount of qualified candidates. You can also really take that strategy to social media as well. With social media advertising, you can be very geographic specific in how you're promoting your content. And so if it's a specific position that's open in a specific area and you're going after a specific audience, you can really hone that in on social media to get in front of those candidates even before they're searching on Indeed, Monster, and ZipRecruiter. But that's really the majority of your spend towards social media. You should be looking at that as specifically building applicant flow for your open recs and for your open positions. I was going to mention this before as well. We are going to do a Q&A at the end of this webinar. So if there's any questions kind of as we're going through some of this, feel free to throw that into the Q&A section. And we'll make sure we spend some time going through the questions at the end. All right, so we covered active versus passive candidates, strategies to get in front of them both. We talked about channels. I'm really recommending, as far as recruitment marketing, when you think of generating content, putting stuff out there, really focus on social media. That's kind of where you get the best bang for your buck when you're looking at, actually getting in front of an audience. Social media is one of the best places to do that. Now, let's talk about like communication channels is the next segment that I want to sit on for a little bit here is, as you're now you're getting in front of people are applying for your positions, is really thinking about how do people communicate right now? And I've seen this evolve a lot, especially the past 5 years, move more and more towards text messaging as a communication tool versus other channels like email, even phone calls, voicemails. SMS, text messaging, is becoming the preferred communication method for most people. And I'm seeing this even like broaden, for position types. I think a lot of people have kind of adopted that, especially for more entry-level positions, the frontline workforce, SMS being a great tool to connect with candidates there, but even in more professional positions as well. SMS can be a great way to engage your candidates, increase your candidate conversion rate, interview rate, and hire rate as well. So if you don't have a text messaging solution in place, that's definitely one of I'd put that as a pretty high priority, because that's something that you can, even without increasing your candidate flow or getting a lot more applicants, you can be a lot more efficient with your existing candidate pool if you're communicating better with your existing candidates. And then looking at that, not even just from an initial like candidate engagement perspective, but also re-engaging past candidates. Hopefully your database is structured in a way that you can kind of segment past applicants, based on certain, personas or positions they've applied for in the past. But these can be great pools of candidates that you can re-engage with. Say you had people applying 6 months ago, 12 months ago, going back and sending direct SMS communication to these individuals can be a great way to engage with people. Again, kind of the general rule here is like, think about where people are spending most of their time and capturing them there. So people are spending a ton of time on social media these days. And whenever they get a text message, that's what they pay attention to, more so oftentimes than maybe an email that they'll receive or a voicemail as well. So SMS, that's one thing from not just a candidate engagement, but also looking at from a long-term employer brand perspective. This can be a great tool to stay in front of the people that have already inquired about positions for your organization. So it's not necessarily a way of expanding your audience and getting more applicants in your pipeline, but it's a way to nurture and be more successful with your existing candidate pool. And again, great practical ways to think about SMS is, obviously initial engagement with candidates. Make sure your recruiters are leveraging text messaging as well as email, and phone calls, but initially engaging there, but then also thinking about re-engaging with candidates. This is usually one of the easiest ways to fill positions. If you're not doing this already, is going back to people that have in the past inquired about specific positions and re-engaging them when a new rec is opened. All right, so the next thing I want to touch on here is generative AI is becoming more and more of a conversation wherever you go, and especially in talent acquisition and HR. This is, I'm seeing a lot of conversations about this. There were the SHRM conference a couple weeks ago. I was there, and there were a lot of workshops talking about this. On the trade show floor, there were multiple vendors where this is what they were talking about. And so where does AI kind of fit into this whole sphere of recruitment marketing? Does it have a place? If so, what can that look like for your organization? The way I think about this, so I had a conversation the other day, and we were talking about recruitment marketing, leveraging social media platforms, and this individual was saying, like, yes, totally agreeing. This is things she's been talking to her team about. But the breakdown was, this is almost quote for quote. We agree with you, but we don't know what to say. So that is oftentimes the big barrier for implementing effective recruitment strategies, is we simply don't know what to say. What do we post about? Yes, we agree we need to be on Facebook. We agree we need to be posting on LinkedIn, these channels where our potential best employees are spending their time. But what do we say is often the biggest barrier. I know a lot of teams, recruitment teams, maybe you don't have access to, a content team, or a marketing team. So how do you effectively deploy the strategies on these platforms if you don't know what to say? So this is really where I feel AI can help you eliminate that barrier to deploying effective strategies at scale. So looking at, how can AI come into play here? Viewing AI as almost your marketing assistant can be a great starting point, and thinking about this, where this is not necessarily coming in to eliminate roles in your TA team or do the job of in your TA team, but it can be a support to those already serving these roles. And again, one of these roles that I really feel that AI can really help is in recruitment marketing and recruitment advertising, because often the biggest barrier there is simply, we need something to say, and we don't have the time to produce and generate that type of content. I'm going to do a quick example of what that could look like. This is something that we've been paying a lot of attention to here at Boostpoint. Recently, it was about a month ago, where, again, we've been seeing conversations about this, especially the last 8 months or so. Started paying closer attention to it and said, hey, maybe there's a way that we can help incorporate this into our core platform and help solve some of this problem. Because, when you look at the interface that a lot of recruitment teams have been interfacing with in the past, it's been ChatGPT. Most of you all have probably been in the platform, at some point, helping produce some content. But what we found is most of the teams that start using this, after a week or two, they find all the content just becomes vanilla. It's like, yes, it can often get you started, but you end up spending maybe just as much time editing the content as you would just, starting from scratch. And so it needs to be more specific to your brand and to the positions that you're hiring for it to be super useful. And that's where I feel ChatGPT just falls short a lot. in this. So we're looking at, hey, let's look at this problem and seeing if we can provide a solution for this. So just going to bring this up as an example. I'll share my screen here in a second. Here we go. Of how generative AI and how you can be using this in your day-to-day, workflow. So pulling this up, sharing my screen. Sorry for the pause. There we go. So this is an alpha version of a generative AI tool that our product team launched about a month ago. So for an example here, if I'm a TA professional at Boostpoint, we need to fill a sales executive role. So I'm just inputting here a little bit of information. All right, our company name, a bit about the job, the audience, the people that I'm targeting here. And then these are the things that I can produce to help bring awareness to this type of position. So I could look at, all right, let me do a job board ad. So this would be something that could get me started on, an Indeed post or something I would submit through my ATS. Looking at social media content, here would be an example of a Facebook post that I could produce. Here would be an example of a LinkedIn post. Again, LinkedIn, a bit of a different audience. So the way you write on LinkedIn is going to be different than Facebook. But again, right here, this is taking away the barrier of me needing to spend a lot of time producing this content from scratch, where if I can have a starting point of, hey, let me go ahead and I'm doing an email campaign to people that have maybe already applied in my database and we're reminding them about this position. All right, I jump in here and I can have a starting point for email content, SMS content. Maybe I do a lot in LinkedIn direct messaging, LinkedIn InMail. This could produce some really specific content specifically for LinkedIn. And so again, this is really the way I feel generative AI can help assist recruitment teams in making them more effective in their everyday life. Again, this will then eliminate that barrier of, all right, I know we should be posting on Facebook, but what should we post? This can be a great way to get something up, and now you're there. All right, just making sure I didn't miss anything here on my notes. Going to open it up for Q&A here in a second. So if there's anybody that has any specific questions, feel free to start filling those out in the Q&A section right now. Again, I really feel kind of in wrapping this up, we're really at an important time in the middle of the year here, because again, I know a lot of budgets have been shrinking in recruitment teams, TA teams, but the need is still there to fill positions. So just thinking about how can you be more strategic in filling those roles when you don't have the biggest budgets, it's going to be, how are you taking advantage of organic social media? How do you get in front of the passive job seekers in kind of a backdoor type of way versus just spending more money on Indeed? And I hope this helps you get there in a pretty quick way. All right, so going over some questions here in our Q&A. Give me a second here as I'm reading through some of these. All right, so here's a great question. Our organization is very large, but it's in a very rural and remote location. In addition to creating an employer brand advertising, what advice would you have for these types of locations? So looking at rural locations here. So these types of areas I've seen have been, historically, they're really hard to just throw money at and expect candidates. So this is where these types of areas, you spend a lot of money on Indeed, even social media, and you may not get the best results when you really compare cost per applicant, cost per hire for your advertising dollar versus, some other areas that tend to be more populated. So for rural areas, I really encourage people to really double down on the organic side. What are things that you can be posting on social media that really engage with your community and build that type of brand within your local area? Because again, it's going to be really, really hard to just spend more and think that you'll be getting more results, because there's sometimes just not enough of an audience in that area to engage with advertising. But taking more of an organic approach and just being in front of people from an organic perspective and engaging in the community in that way can be a really great way of doing this. And again, thinking even more strategically about that, instead of just posting content about your company, the way you really build relevance is if you're engaging in your community in a certain way and highlighting those types of activities or events in social media can be a really great way to improve engagement and get more people engaged with your organization. All right, have a couple more here. Oh, quick note here, Jordan Sittler, our marketing director, just gave me a great reminder. If you're interested in, when I was sharing my screen there, the generative AI tool, that is a tool that is free right now, available. It's in the alpha stage, something that we launched about a week ago. If you want free access to that, I'm going to go ahead in the chat section here, put that out there, and you can click straight to that to create a free account while it's still in the alpha stage here. So link is in the chat, boostpointcreate.ai, if you just want to type that in as well. Have a couple more questions here that we'll get to. Okay, healthcare workers. So this specific individual calling in, they are in the healthcare space. Is there a specific channel that you would recommend for healthcare workers? For our customers, we have about 50% of our customer base is in the healthcare space. Facebook is the platform that we've seen be most successful specifically for healthcare. And so that I'd probably prioritize Facebook, Instagram, and then TikTok. If you're looking at, if you're in the healthcare space. Here's another question. How do you stand out among other Fortune 500 companies making the same kind of content, testimonials, webinars, etc. in the TA world? Really, the best way I recommend here is, again, if you can't outspend, you kind of have to outsmart. And this really comes to creativity. I always look at, especially in the realm of social media content and social media strategy, creativity is your multiplication factor. It's your X factor. You can have the same budget, be targeting the same audience, against the same brands, but content and the creativity around content can be your secret weapon. When you look at going above and beyond maybe what your competitors are doing. So think of some ways that, you're just more creative, whether that's things that you're specifically doing in your community, and then highlighting those things in your area. I've seen, again, I've heard of some really creative things that people have done in the past. One was, they sponsored an ice cream truck in a certain community that, where their main workforce was. So over the weekend, they sponsored an ice cream truck. And then, their company, their brand, was just the ones behind that type of thing. And then that's also something, they highlighted in their social media. And so again, thinking of really creative things that you could do that your competitors aren't is how you're going to get the edge with some of these tactics. In your opinion, what are some of the negative aspects of using AI for recruiting? So I think one of the main things we have to realize here is AI is not to replace the human in the process. If you're looking at AI as a replacement tool for recruiters or a replacement tool for recruitment marketing teams, I feel that's where some of the danger lies. I look at AI as a powerful assistant to a lot of these roles. Even, say you're trying to, leverage AI to automate some of your tasks and things like that. I think that's a great thing to do as a recruiter and as a recruitment process, but be careful not to eliminate the human in the recruiting process. Because even like the workforce, we're all catching up to this. I run a technology company here at Boostpoint. A lot of you all, you're probably looking at some very advanced technologies that people might not still be aware that exist. And so you have to be thinking about that as people are engaging, with your brand. And if it's totally AI driven and you remove the human out of that process completely, I don't think the workforce is ready. And I'm not sure if they'll ever be ready for that type of an experience. So again, that's kind of where I see the danger in AI a little bit, is like, make sure that we're not looking to completely replace the human, but I think a healthy way of looking at it is, hey, this can be a great assistant to what I'm already doing. All right, we'll get to one or two more questions here before we wrap this up. Really appreciate the questions here, guys. Some really great questions here. All right, this is a great one. Recommendations for recruiting niche jobs. Lots of the people we recruit are not on LinkedIn or social media. We rely a lot on referrals, but would be interested to hear any other ideas. All right, niche jobs. You might be surprised. Again, I'm not sure exactly what type of niche jobs kind of we're talking about right here, but I have been surprised as like the type of audience on even just the Facebook platform. So the reality is 2/3 of the US total population have an active Facebook account. And so, again, not sure if you'll be able to find them if you advertise or organic. Maybe you've tried some of these things, but maybe if it hasn't worked just on the first try or the second try, like, don't give up on these platforms right away. But I'm thinking of other niche ways. So I look at one of the hard ones, maybe if you're looking to attract candidates, but one of the things that everybody has is one of these devices right here. A smartphone, a mobile device, and thinking about, what are the places that your audience for these niche jobs, like, how are they interacting on that device right there? I think SMS might be a strategy that you'd want to maybe do some creative processing around. That's probably where I'd go first. If you're looking for other channels, it's like, all right, how do we maybe build a database of candidates where we have their cell phone numbers, they've opted into communication to our organization, build that up and engage with potential candidates in that way. The thing with SMS that you have to realize is, like, again, you can't just do SMS blasts to people without them opting into communication. So, that's where, Facebook, LinkedIn can be great sources. You can go to people without them, opting into communication beforehand. So that can be the challenge with SMS a little bit. But that could be one mode of communication that you might want to look into is, all right, how could I engage people and implement an SMS strategy for really niche roles? And I think that's about most of the questions. Sorry, I'm just double checking, going through the Q&A here. I think that's it. That is all the questions. All right, everybody, thanks so much for the engagement here. Love the questions. Really appreciate your attendance on our webinar this afternoon. And we hope to see you on the next one. We'll see you.